So good day. So the topic that I'll be discussing is on Unit 1 Part 2 Ratio and Proportion. They are often used together as a phrase, ratio and proportion, but are they in fact different terms for the same mathematical concept? If asked the difference, how might you respond? So what is a ratio? Is ratio different with fraction? So the ratio is actually a relative magnitude between the size or how much of two quantities or comparison of two numbers. So it resembles a fraction except in the way in which it is presented. So for ratio, it is separated by a colon, while for fraction, it is separated by a slash, and then ratio is expressed as is to for reading, while fraction is over. All rules governing common fraction equally apply to ratio. So for example, this is a ratio. It is expressed as 5 to 10. For fraction, it is 5 over 10, but they are similar with each other. This is a portion of a whole, a portion of a whole. So 5 is a portion of 10, 5 is a portion over 10. So here are the rules for ratio. So when two terms of a ratio are multiplied or divided by the same number, the value of the ratio is unchanged. Number two, two ratios with the same value are equivalent. Equivalent ratios have equal cross products and equal reciprocals. Number three, the numerator of the one fraction equals the product of its denominator and the fraction by cross multiplication. Number 4, the denominator of the equals of the quotient of its numerator divided by the other fraction or its reciprocal. So here are the rules for ratio. So first rule, so when two terms of a ratio are multiplied or divided by the same number, the value of the ratio is unchanged. For example, 1/3 times 2 over 2 is equivalent to 2 over 6. If you will divide the 2 over 6 with the same numerator and denominator, it will still be equivalent to 1/3. So that's the first rule. Second rule, so two ratios with the same value are equivalent. Equivalent ratios have equal cross products and equal reciprocals. So for example, you have 1/3 times or equals to 2 over 6. Its reciprocal will be equivalent to 6 over 6. So that's now rule number 2. Rule number 3. So the numerator of the one fraction equals the product of its denominator and the fraction by cross multiplication. So for example, the numerator is missing and you have this problem. So x, it is the product and its reciprocal divided by the denominator. So 2 times 3 or 3 times 2 divided by 6 is equivalent to 1. So 6 divided by 6 equivalent to 1. So the missing now is 1 over 3. Yeah. And then last rule, so the denominator of the equals of the quotient of its numerator divided by the other fraction or the reciprocal. So for example, the denominator is missing. So you're looking for 3, for example. So it will become 1 times 6 divided by 2 is equivalent to 6 over 2, which is equivalent now to 3. So the answer here is equivalent to 3. So that's the last rule for ratio. What is a proportion? A proportion is simply a statement that two ratios are equal. So for example, 5:10 is also equivalent to 1:2, or 5 over 10 is equivalent to 1 half. Proportion may be expressed in three standard forms. You have A is to B equals C is to D, or A is to B equals C is to D also. This means two columns, which also means equals, or A over B equals C over D, wherein the products of the means should be equal to the products of the extremes. Your means are your B and your C, and then your extremes, which are found on the outermost part, is your A and D. The product of your means should be equal to the product of your extremes also.
So here are the rules for proportion. So the first rule is the product of the extreme is equal to the product of the means. So let's say here, this would be your ratio and your proportion, two ratios, C over D. So your means here are the B and C. So B times C equals the extremes, which is A times D. Each product of these two should be equivalent to each other. So for example, you have 1 over 3 equals 2 over 6. Each product should be equivalent to or the same with each other. So let's multiply both sides. So 3 times 2 equals 1 times 6. So what would be the product? It's equivalent to 6, and then this will be equivalent to 6 also. So that's the first rule for proportion. Second rule for proportion, if the missing term is a mean, it will be by the product of the extremes divided by the given mean. So for example, you have AB equals CD. Again, these are your means, B times C, and then your extremes is A times D. So what if the missing is letter B? So you will divide both sides by letter C to come up now with a solution where the missing mean is now identified. So it will become B equals A times D over C. What about if letter C is missing? So if C is missing, you have to divide both sides with the given mean, which is B, and then cancel this side. It will now look like this. A times D divided by B. So those are for if the means are missing, one of the means are missing, and the other mean is given. Rule number 3. So if the missing term is an extreme, it will be by the product of the mean divided by the given extreme. So these are your means, your extreme, sorry, your A and D. So what if A is missing? So you have to divide both sides by D and then cancel this one. What's left now is A equals B times C over D. What about if the extreme that is missing now is letter D? So you have to divide both sides by 8 and then cancel this. What's left now would be D equals B times C over 8. So those are the rules now for proportions. So most pharmaceutical calculations can be performed by the use of proportion or ratio and proportion. We have two solutions for this one. The first one is using similar units used in the numerator and the denominator, and then the next one is true mixed ratio. So let's use this problem in solving and or using now the first solution, which is similar units used in the numerator and the denominator. So this problem now is if the amount of dextromethorphan hydrobromide is 240 ml of cap syrup is 480 milligram, what would be the volume required for a child's dose of 10 milligram? So the given here now is in each 240 ml of a cap syrup, it contains 480 milligram of dextromethorphan hydrobromide. What if now the amount that was administered to the patient or the child is only 10 milligram? What is now the equivalent volume of this 10 milligram? So in solving for this one, you always have to write the given first. What are the given? So you have 480 milligram, 240 ml, and then 10 milligram. The volume is missing or the unknown. If we will follow the similar units, it will be like this. So X ml divided by 240 ml, which is now equivalent to 10 milligram or 480 milligram. So here, you have to make sure that each pair is facing each other. So for example, 480 milligram in 240 ml of the cough syrup. 10 milligram, what is now its equivalent volume. So using our rules in ratio and proportion, we will multiply each side. So this will become now x times 480 milligram equals 240 ml times 10 milligram. And then since we are looking for the x, we will divide both sides by 480 milligram. So cancel this. X now becomes 240 ml times 10 milligrams divided by 480 milligram. The answer now is 240 times 10 milligram is equivalent to 2,400 divided by 480 milligram. It's now equivalent to 5 ml. So the volume now that is equivalent to 10 milligram is 5 ml. So in each 10 milligram, it should be contained in 5 ml, or in 5 ml, in each 5 ml, it contains now 10 milligram of dextromethorphan.
Next solution is using the mixed ratio. So here, it means that the numerator and denominator have different units. So for this particular solution, we can already follow the general rules for ratio and proportion. So we can assign now which is A, which is B, which is C, and which is D. So if the problem is if the amount of dextromethorphan hydrobromide in 240 ml of cough syrup is 480 milligram, what would be the volume required for a child's dose of 10 milligram? So following the same problem, what would be the equivalent of 10 milligram in ml, or how many ml is required if we're going to administer 10 milligram of the cough syrup, which contains now dextromethorphan? So for this problem, we can use A as our missing, for example. B would be our 10 milligram. And then C would become our 240 ml. And then D is our 480 milligrams. Okay, so make sure, always have to make sure that each has his own pair or its own pair. And then the unknown is your letter A. Okay? So let's follow the formula. A equals B. A over B equals C over D. So this is the one that is missing. So let's simplify by multiplying B times C equals A times D. So the missing is an extreme. So divide both sides by D. It will now become A equals B times C over D. So let's substitute now our given to this formula. It will now look like this. So B is 10 milligrams times 240 ml divided by 480 milligram. The answer now would be A equals 5 ml. It's because 10 times 240 ml is equivalent to 2,400, and then divided with 480 milligram, it will now become 5 ml. So in ratio and proportion, if one part increases, the other part increases. What do I mean by that? So for example, 10 milligrams here becomes 480 milligram. So the volume should also increase. So from 5 ml, it becomes 240 ml, or vice versa. Okay, so that's for ratio and proportion using mixed ratio. So let's have another problem. So if 3 tablets contain a total of 1,500 milligram, how many milligrams are there in 9 tablets? So let's use the two methods. So the bear here is 3 tablets for 1,500 milligram. What about in 9 tablets? How many milligrams? So let's first write the given. So 3 tablets, which is equivalent to, or the amount of 3 tablets is equivalent to 1,500 milligram. 9 tablets, and then the missing now is the milligram that is required to make 9 tablets. So let's follow the solution for similar units. So it will look like this. So 3 tabs over 9 tabs equals 1,500 milligram over the missing milligram of 9 grams. So what we need to remember here is the pairing. So 3 tabs is the pair of 1,000 milligrams. So this is the ratio, portion of a whole, portion of a whole. So remember, each each pair should be facing each other. So for example, 3 tabs is facing 1,500 milligram, and then 9 tabs should be facing the one that is missing. And then using ratio and proportion by multiplying the numerator and the denominator, we will have this one. So x milligrams times 3 tabs equals 9 tablets times 1,500 milligrams. So since we are looking for the number of milligrams per 9 tablets, we will divide both sides by 3 tabs to come up now with a formula that looks like this. So x milligram equals 9 tablets times 1,500 milligram divided by 3 tablets. The answer now would be 4,500 milligram. So in 9 tablets, there should be 4,000 milligram of the drug or the active ingredient. Let's use now the solution for mixed ratio. So in mixed ratio, we can actually use the general formula for ratio and proportion, which is A over B equals C over D. So again, let's try to write the given, but now we will assign each given to a particular portion of the formula. So A may be assigned as A may be assigned as 3 tablets, B is your 1 is to 500, so ratio of a whole, and then 9 tablets, and then the one that is missing is the letter D. So for the solution, we will follow this formula. A over B equals C over D. So portion of a whole, portion of a whole. And then substitute your given to your formula, it will look like this. So 3 tablets over 1,500 milligram equals 9 tablets divided by the missing milligram of the 9 tablets. So again, this is portion of a whole, portion of a whole. And then simplify by multiplying the denominator, cross multiply each. So it will look like this. So 3 tablets times x milligram equals 1,500 milligram times 9 tablets. So since we are looking for the letter D, we will divide both sides with 3 tablets, and it will now look like this. So x milligrams equals 9 tablets times 1,500 milligram divided by 3 tablets is also 4,500 milligram. So you can use either of these two. So you can use which is more convenient for you. So you can use similar units or the mixed ratio. Let's have another problem. So if 5 grams of a sample was used in making a 200 ml solution, how many ml of solution can a 15 grams make? So we will again use the two solutions. So the similar units and the mixed ratio. So let's use first the similar units. So again, you have to write the given. So the 5 grams and its pair is 200 ml. So this is the portion of a whole. And then 15 grams, and then the one that is missing is the volume that a 15 gram can make. So this is the pair, portion of a whole, portion of a whole also. So solution, so mix similar units. So 15 grams over 5 grams over 15 grams equals 200 ml over the x volume. So again, this is portion of a whole, portion of a whole. The pair should be facing each other. So for similar units, the pair should be facing each other. This is the portion of a whole, portion of a whole. So let's simplify by multiplying or cross-multiplying each denominator with a particular numerator or vice versa. So it will look like this. XML times 5 grams, so this is the cross multiplication. And then 15 grams times 200 ml. So since we are looking for the volume of 15 grams, we will divide both sides by 5 milligram and it will look like this. So 15 grams times 200 ml divided by 5 grams, you will now have 600 ml. So for every 15 grams, it means we can make 600 ml of the solution. For ratio and proportion, if one increases, the other one also increases. So for example, here, the weight increases from 5 grams to 15 grams, the volume should increase. So the volume increases. So from 200, it becomes 600. So that is for ratio and proportion. So if one increases, the other one also increases. Or if the other one decreases, the other one also decreases. Because they are proportion with each other. Next solution is the mixed ratio. Again, we will assign each given with a particular letter using the general formula for ratio and proportion. So for A, that would be our 5 grams. B is our 200 ml. So this is the portion of a whole, the pair. And then 15 grams in D is its pair. So volume of a 15 gram can make, or the milliliters is missing. Again, solution, we'll write this or use this formula: A over V equals C over D. So this is portion of a whole, portion of a whole. So 5 grams over 200 ml is equivalent to 15 grams over the required volume. So this is portion of a whole, portion of a whole. And then cross multiply the denominator and numerator of each side. So it will look like this. Again, you're looking for the XML or the ML. So divide both sides by 5 gram and it will look like this. So 15 grams times 200 ml divided by 5. The answer is also 600 ml. Again, for ratio and proportion, if one part increases, the other part increases. So for example, the weight here increases from 5 to 15 grams. The volume should also increase from 200 to 600 ml. And then the opposite of ratio and proportion, which is known as the inverse proportion. So we will discuss this further when we are in the last unit of this course. So the application of inverse proportion is for making dilute solution. In inverse proportion, if one part increases, the other part decreases, or if one part decreases, the other part increases also. So there is an indirect relationship. That's why it is opposite of the ratio and proportion. So formula is different with ratio and proportion. So just like this one. So A over B equals C over D. Here it's A over C equals D over B. So if you will notice, its pair is not facing each other. So A, B for ratio and proportion here are facing each other. Here it's not facing each other. It's diagonal. Okay, so for inverse proportion, concentrations would be percentage, normality, molarity, molality, and formality. So this is between concentration and the volume. So let's have an example. So if 120 ml of a 10% stock solution are diluted to 240 ml, what will be the final concentration? So the stock solution is 10% and you use now 120 ml. So if you will notice, the volume increases from 120 to 240. So since this is an inverse proportion, the percentage should decrease. Okay? So the first rule or first part is you always have to write the given. So A is 10%. So we will follow the formula a while ago. 10%. B is 120 ml. C is the one that is missing. And then D is 240 ml. So for the solution, we will use this formula. A over C equals D over B. So substitute your given to this formula and it will look like this. So 10% over the percentage or the new percentage upon dilution equals 240 ml divided by 120 ml. And then cross multiply, it will look like this. So the percentage now will be equivalent to 10 times 120 ml divided by 240 ml. Cancel the unit for ml. What's left? It's just the percentage. So the answer now is 5%. So if you will dilute a 10%, a 120 ml of a 10% stock solution to 240, the final concentration now of the solution will be 5%. So again, this is inverse proportion because if one increases, the other one decreases. So for example, the volume increases from 120 ml to 240 ml. The concentration now will decrease from 10% to 5%. So let's have another example. So if 100 ml of a 50% stock solution were used to make a 30% solution, what is the final volume of the new solution? Again, you have to write the given. So 50% is assigned as A, B is 100 ml, C is 30%, and then the one that is missing is the final volume of the new solution or concentration. So for the solution, we will again follow this formula. A over C equals D over B. So 50% over 30% equals D divided by 100 ml. So cross multiply each and it will look like this. So 50% times 100 divided by 30%. The new volume now of the solution is 166.67%. So again, this is inverse proportion. Why? Because the concentration decreases from 50 to 30%, but the volume now increases from 100 to 166.67%. So that is now for inverse proportion.